Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by Tamika Dudley, who is calling in from DC on this lovely afternoon for her, morning for me. But she was the Naismith Coach of the Year for 2022 nationally. She's the girls basketball coach at Sidwell Friends, and we are very excited to have her here today. Coach, thanks for joining us.
No, of course. And thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure to be able to kind of hopefully share something that I've learned either from my experience or from someone else, and just kind of share our experience here at Sidwell. So thank you for having me.
Love it. Love it. And I want to learn a lot as we go. So if we can help ground our listeners as you take us through your background as a coach, how did you end up in the profession? How did you end up at Sidwell? I know you've had a few stops along the way, but take us through the journey.
Yeah, no. So just a quick, as a player, had a really great coaches in my career, really great coaches that have influenced me. And even as a player, I just always felt like this sense of like leadership, natural leadership. And so even on the court, whether I was the point guard or I was the post player, I always had this ability to lead others. But more importantly, I wanted to get into coaching to help other young ladies in the same way that I was helped. And I continue to preach that message, like I was so blessed to have really good coaches and that basically guided me, because my life could have went one way or the other. I could have been like, not a college graduate and done other things in my life, but basketball really was my catalyst and my vehicle to success. So super blessed for that. And I just want to continue to, of course, give that back. But so when I got out of college, I knew that I wanted to coach basketball. I always thought I was going to coach at the collegiate level. So I was like, I'm just going to pick a random major because I'm going to coach basketball for the rest of my life. So whatever. So, but got out of college, went to coach at UNC Wilmington. And I literally called the coach like every single day until she had no choice but to like bring me on staff. So I was super motivated to get into that college world as far as coaching is concerned. And I was there for a short time and just realized like, I wasn't able to have the impact that I wanted to have in my position. I was the newbie, right? So the young coach, knowing now what I know, and I look back when I understand like now, that's the process, right? So basically didn't enjoy that part of coaching basketball. And I went back to, excuse me, I'm sorry. No. Sorry about that.
No worries. That's the power of technology and editing. You won't even have that show up on the pod.
No doubt. So when I left coaching college at UNC Wilmington, I got into the high school world, got a job at Potomac High School where I coached, actually had an opportunity to coach Lynetta Kaiser, who went on to play at Maryland and went on to play in the WNBA. I got there her sophomore year and I was the assistant coach there behind a gentleman, his name is Mike Wilson, who coached me in high school. He was one of the assistant coaches when I was in high school. So I coached under him for like 3 years. And what happened was I had always thought I would go back to college, but I ended up having my daughter. And so really like I knew that I could not be the mother that I wanted to be to her and coach college sports. At the time, it was just such a different industry. They didn't have those dead periods or shutdowns where you didn't have to work, you know what I mean? Like, or not necessarily not work, but the demands. So we were going. So I knew that I couldn't coach, be the mom that I wanted to be and the coach I wanted to be. So I decided to stay at the high school level and stayed at Potomac for a while. Then I took 2 years off because I was like, I don't know if I want to keep coaching. Like I wanted to invest in my kid. And then it seemed like every time I left or I wanted to leave, coaching, someone just reeled me back in. And I was like, man, so my old high school coach wanted me to come coach with him at Woodbridge. And he was like, I'll just pay, I want to pay you a little bit. I was like, you don't got to pay me, I'll just volunteer. But I think he knew like me, if he paid me, then I knew I was going to be like, okay, I'm going to put my whole heart into this because he's paying me. So I try to get away from that, just volunteer. But he's like, no, I want to pay you. So I'm like, okay. So started coaching at my alma mater, which was Woodbridge High School under Coach George Washington, who was also my high school coach coming through Woodbridge. And I was there with him for 2 or 3 years as his assistant. And then he actually had a heart attack during one of the games, went into cardiac arrest. we were coaching in a game in December around Christmas time, and during the game went into cardiac arrest. And I literally like had to perform CPR on him. Like it was insane. I'm like, I can't make this stuff. My life, some of the things I just can't make up. But he survived and decided to retire after that year. And so I, of course, applied for the position. He was like, you got to apply for a position. And so I did. And then and at that time, they were actually transitioning into a rebuild. We had graduated some seniors. He was kind of going to be done anyway. And so anyway, I wasn't charged with the rebuild of Woodbridge girls basketball. And when I played there, I had so much pride because we were so talented. So it was like a passion of mine. So first 3 years, we got our asses kicked, like 5 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins. It was bad. I was like, damn, like maybe I shouldn't be coaching. Maybe I'm not good enough. And the thing was, we were working so hard, right? We were like watching film. We were doing everything right, scouting, working our kids hard, parents bought in, but we just couldn't get over the hump. And so, but we were doing like camps. We had lots of money. Our kids had the best uniforms. I really try to focus on the experience. And one of the things that I've always mentioned in some of these podcasts is like, how do you get kids to play for you when you're not winning? Like, why would someone want to come to us and we win 5 games? So we did everything else right. I mean, we did all the other things, and people started to notice the things we were doing with the kids we had in our program. And so we got some really talented kids to come play for us, and, you know, ended up taking off and finally like got over the hump in 2018, 2019, when I ended up leaving Woodbridge. But I never had any intention on leaving there. I wanted to stay at Woodbridge. I was going to graduate. My daughter was going to graduate from there. I had everything lined up for me. And then I was actually invited to bring my daughter to a workout at Sidwell. And it's interesting, the day of that workout, we weren't going to come because Kendall had played in a game prior and she had a muscle cramp. And I want to say she was like 11 or 12, hadn't had many muscle cramps. So we weren't going to go. And I was like, let's just get a pickle or something, get a pickle juice, making it feel better. And then let's just go see. Like, I was like, because all her teammates had gone, we're going to go. So I went there with her AAU parents. We were all the moms and us were standing upstairs watching. And I was like, looking around, like, where is the coach at? Like, all these kids, where's the coach? And then the AD walked by and we just started talking, the parents and they knew I coached basketball. And they were like, you should ask them, like, you know, where's the coach? So when I did, he was like, oh, she's retiring. I was like, oh, okay. So he walked away. Then we talked some more. I was like, I wonder what they pay here. They probably can't pay me what I get paid at Woodbridge. They're like, Tamika, are you kidding me? This is Sidwell Friends. Like, I didn't know a lot about Sidwell. I was just like, okay, so let me ask. So I asked them what they paid. And I was like, well, maybe I should apply. I was like, let me just apply and just kind of go through the process. But I still all the time was like, I'm not taking this job. I'm just going to see what happens. But I knew I wasn't taking it. And I loved my kids. And I had kids at Woodbridge that we were lined up to win state championships for at least 3 to 4 years. I mean, we would have kept it rolling. So as I started going through the process and, you know, then I was like, well, damn, why wouldn't I not take this job? So I just, you know, and through the whole interview process, I just wasn't sure. And then, you know, he laid it out for us and the rest is history. Like my daughter was able to come, they paid well and everything was lined up. And I started thinking about those kids that will be leaving after their senior year and I'd still be at Woodbridge. And so that's how I ended up at Sidwell. Sorry for the long story.
No, I love it because I've got a lot of data now and a lot of things to talk about. And I want to start with going back to the experience you described of your coach and him having cardiac arrest in the middle of the game, you performing CPR. And I had a similar situation this year where one of my athletes, as we were loading up the vans to go to a game, had like a full-on seizure. Wow. That lasted for 30 minutes. He ended up in the ICU at Stanford for a week. But our kids responded immediately and handled, because I was coaching like the middle school game. Right. And I was thinking after the fact, it's like, wow, we got great kids. And it was like 2 years before that, before COVID, we actually took the time every season to put our teams, all of our teams, not just the basketball teams, through an emergency action protocol and like practice if something were to happen. And so, long story to get to, from that experience, one, thankfully you know what you're doing, but how has that framed your journey post that situation as you prepare for things that traditionally we're not thinking about, right? As you think about how you frame practice, how you travel, how you do things on your travel team right now, where often we're just so far down the grind of like the basketball piece, but now you got to zoom out a little bit and think about the big picture of the other things we're responsible. And maybe it's nothing specific, but how did that moment affect your approach to coaching?
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really good thing to have your players train, first of all. Like it gives me some ideas for Sidwell, honestly, because I think that's great. And even in that situation, like it's so nerve-wracking that you're just trying to remember like the things that you were taught. And I remember always kind of like joking around during my CPR classes and just kind of not taking it very seriously. And then after that, I'm like, shit, I need to be like focused. But anyway, it just kind of gave me a new appreciation for the overall experience of the player, the athlete. Like so many people focus on winning and losing. And to be honest, like I was one of those coaches when I first started. I wasn't always just focused on winning and losing, but like it was more at the forefront of what I did. And now I try harder to focus on the experience. And it's just such a bigger picture than most people are able to see. And I want our kids to enjoy what they're doing and their teammates. And like, we don't just focus on the Kiki Rices. Like, I'll go rebound for the kid that may never touch the floor for us. Or I make sure I check in with those kids' parents or make sure they have a leadership. It's just that ownership and sense of belonging is so much more important than the wins and losses. And I think that experience really shaped me in that way. And I'll also say the one thing about Coach Walsh, who was the gentleman who had the heart attack, is that he is he was always a big military guy. So he always taught me a lot of lessons about the military and when in charge, be in charge, and all these different lessons. But he also is probably one of the most caring, nurturing person that I've ever met in my life. Like, you could call him, I could call him right now and say, hey, I need to borrow $1,000. And he'd be like, no question, here, what I need to send it, whatever. He's just one of those people. And he always took very good care of me. And so he taught me a lot about caring about the person, more so than just what happens on the court.
Yeah, I think those moments, and hopefully most people don't have to go through them, but our moment here really changed the perspective of where we were. And then you get in the media questions. It's like, yo, we're just happy to be here.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm glad we get to play a game today. I'm glad we got that practice. We're just blessed. So thanks for sharing that story. I mean, it was obviously something I had no idea about. And, it I think is a good reminder for all of us as coaches to prepare for the unexpected and do what we can so that we can be in a support role if, God forbid, we're ever in that spot.
Yeah.
I'm curious how your journey from assistant to head coach at Woodbridge went. And what I mean by that is we can be working for the best coaches. We can have played for the best coaches. We can have observed great coaches, but moving over 18 inches in the seat is a different ball game.
Right.
And I would love to know if you can reflect back to that time. What is it that you figured out right away that you needed to figure out? Like you realize, oh my God, I have no idea what's going on here.
Yeah. I was fortunate. I feel like that, Coach Walsh allowed me to do a lot. He was like, when I was under him, he was on his way out. Right. And so he always kind of like, and, empowered me to do things and to lead and to take on responsibilities. He delegated a lot to me while I was his assistant coach. So I really don't think that helped me transition very smoothly into that leadership, that head coaching role. One of the things that was actually the hardest for me was finding assistants, coaches that, understood where the direction was and what I needed them to do and how they can help. Like, I was one of those coaches that was kind of like a self-motivated, like I wanted to know what can I do to help? And not everyone is like that. And so that was the hardest part, I think, for me. And I wanted them to, and I'm actually like I'm actually kind of like the softie, but I always need my assistant coaches to be the softies. And I always tend to bring in assistant coaches who are like the tough people. So I'm like, I need you guys to be the softies. And so anyway, the managing of assistant coaches has probably been the most challenging thing for me as a head coach. Just trying to find that dynamic. I think I've kind of found it now with the assistant coach I have on staff that I have, but and then wanting to help groom them as well. Like that's important to me, is that I help be a good role model for coaches that want to go on to become head coaches.
Yeah, that's always an interesting dynamic of how do you divide labor amongst your staff? What roles do each of you play? What hats do you wear so that you can focus on developing your student athletes and be shifting sometimes depending on who you're working with and what their strengths are. As a spin on that, you made a comment about kind of career public school, and now here's Sidwell Friends, which for those of you that aren't aware, it is an independent school. Many of the government DC-ites children go to school there, some of them more famous than others, but what was that transition like, having built a program, not from the ground up, but you struggled initially and you got Woodbridge going, but then to pivot to Sidwell, which is a completely different setup, completely different mission and vision. How did you adjust to that? And what did you realize there that, oh my goodness, I thought I had this thing dialed in and now here we are?
You know what? Like, it's funny because I didn't feel like it was this huge transition. Like, I just came in and did what I was doing at Woodbridge, like the same thing. I didn't lower my expectations. I didn't change the way I did things. I just was able to be myself. I've always been myself here, despite like the powerful people that I work with. Can you edit me for one more second? Can you hang on for 1 second? Come in. Oh, shit, hold on. Sorry. I need you to get on that Zoom call. Okay. Sorry, he's gonna edit this out.
You can't give my phone.
Yeah, you don't have to come in here and do it. I want you to get on that Zoom call. Let me see.
Yeah, hey, congrats, by the way. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you.
Okay, hang on. Give me 2 more seconds. I'm sorry.
Yeah, take your time.
Your back is sort of, well, then just stationary shoot on it. So
I'm trying to figure out why.
Because your back is just hurting, Kendall. I mean, it's probably like a pulled muscle or something. Okay, I'm sending this to your Sidwell. Which your Sidwell email?
What? Yeah.
Okay, I'm sending it right now. Yeah, go get on that Zoom call. And can you please ask if we need if we need to get a rental car, and then what was the other question? If you can.
I don't want to ask all these questions.
Say you have a couple of personal questions that if it's okay to ask when everyone's off. Okay, right. Oh my God. Okay. All right.
I'm assuming they're flying you out to LA for this thing.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be nice. They're like giving us a car service and they're taking good care of us. So
nice. Be careful. You come out here, you might not want to go back to the East Coast.
It's crazy. I hate flying. And we went to Cali this year for spring break for my daughter. And I was like, okay, good. I got that out of my, I don't gotta do a 5-hour flight again. And now we're going back out to Cali. Another freaking 5 hours. I'm like, what in the hell? We love it out there. I love it. It's so expensive. I don't even know how anyone can live out there.
We teach at a boarding school.
Oh shit. Like that's actually smart. I'm like, I can afford it.
There you go. Go ahead. So we were talking about the transition to Sidwell and how you just been yourself. You've always been yourself. And that's worked out.
Yeah. So even working with some of these really powerful people, I'm just, I just try to be myself. And when I came in, like the kids just bought in. I honestly, I just have to say, like, I feel like I've been blessed. I mean, I really do, because I came in here and I did not face the typical challenges that most people face at Sidwell. Like a lot of the coaches have spoken about, like, not being able to get kids in and having difficult parents. And I really haven't experienced a lot of that. And, but I work really hard on listening and, asking people about themselves, being interested in like what they have to say, all of those things. Because I know for me, like I always know how it feels when people ask questions about me. Mm-hmm. And so I really try hard to make sure that I'm asking and learning about people and building those relationships. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I feel like when I do have a hard situation, it's made easy by the level of trust that we have and the relationship we have with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think an unspoken thing there, if people are listening but not necessarily hearing, is when you arrive somewhere, curiosity is your greatest tool.
Yeah.
And I say the first 2 years you're somewhere, you get to play the I'm the new person card.
Right.
And hey, I don't really, can you tell me why we do this? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And they don't take it personal. So
Right.
ask those questions and figure it out.
Yes.
What would you say is the best thing you do in your program that has the largest ripple effect on culture, but it's more a question of, if you were to go somewhere else, this piece is coming with me because it's been so powerful. I got it here. And if I end up coaching soccer somewhere, we're doing this.
Yeah. I mean, outside of always learning and growing in terms of my coaching ability, like one thing I do is I'm one of those people that I can learn from others. I don't have to go through the hard stuff. Like if I look at someone and they're doing something, I'm like, well, how do you do that? Come show me, come teach me, come teach my kids. So outside of that, like I've always done that, like always asked people who are successful. When I was at Woodbridge, there was a guy who was at Potomac High School. His name is Keith Honoré, really great coach. And they had won multiple state championships. So I said, can I bring my team to your practice? Because we want to watch a state championship team practice to see what you do different. And so I did that. And exactly that year we actually won a state championship, which is crazy. And then our boys coach here he's like a brilliant mind for basketball. So I've actually brought him in to run some of our practices. I'm like, there's just nothing to me that's like my ego would keep me from doing. Like I'm just a humble person, and I just realized like I can learn from others. And even if I'm gonna do what it takes, like I'm gonna bring in people, I'm gonna do what it takes to reach success. So if I can learn or steal or take something from someone else, like in terms of the game, I'm gonna do it. And if I can't teach it, I'm gonna bring someone who can.
Yeah, I love the curiosity piece there, and it leads me to my follow-up, which is, in your desire to learn and grow, have you been able to find things that are non-disciplinary in regards to basketball that you've seen another sport doing that you've implemented in your basketball walk?
So have I seen something that I've seen like a soccer team or a lacrosse team do that I've been able to implement and insert into basketball?
And maybe you modify it a little bit, but it's just like you're wandering around campus or your buddy's one of the other coaches and you're watching, you're like, oh my God, that's the missing link.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I probably have, because Coach Walsh actually was a soccer guy. And he also is a big chess guy. Like he's always like, you need to play chess. If you want to be a great basketball player, be a chess player. I am not a chess player, but you know, I'm sure there's been things that I have done. It's just hard for me to think off the top of my head. But I do see the value in it. And I learned that from him. Like he was always one of those people. And I've more so with my child, I feel like I've done that more. Like, for example, this year our dance instructor did dance class for our girls to work on balance. So that's an example. And he would Kendall played soccer when she was young because she was really tall and kind of gangly. And I was like, she gotta have good feet. And so she played competitive soccer until she was 10 and at a high level. And then she was over it. Then after that, she was like, I don't want to play soccer anymore.
Right.
But so those things, like I definitely see the multi-sport athlete, the benefits of that. But yeah, I mean, there's probably a ton of things.
Well, I like the dance piece. I mean, what did you brought the dance teacher in or dance coach to work with your athletes. What was the takeaway you saw following that with your kids?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it definitely translated to their ability to, one, appreciate the value of another sport for sure, another, you know, profession or whatever, but also in terms of the game, like I definitely think it helped us in terms of like balance on the court, ability to move our body through space, like stuff like that. And I'll even say like a kid like Kiki, who's like Gatorade Player of the Year in soccer, like, oh my God, like amazing footwork and speed and those things that translated to the game 1000%. So, you know, the dance thing, definitely, I could definitely see the difference in our kids in terms of how they move their body through space and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, just really trying to think outside of the box always.
Yeah. Well, I think we get tunnel vision at times. And it's like, well, I want to get better at coaching basketball. Let me go watch a bunch of basketball coaches. And I think there's so much information out there that may not be packaged in the same game you're playing.
Right.
And it's been interesting being AD, and I watch water polo practice every day and I see what they're doing. And I'm like, oh, I like that. Let's go do it.
Right.
On another show I heard you on, you talked about your approach to captains, and it resonated with me because mine is similar. And for those listening, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you don't name them, you don't elect them, you look for leadership to organically grow. You expect everyone to lead, and it's the same thing I do. What I'm curious about is if you are going to make an argument for that approach, and you were going to then also lay out the blueprint for how you find success with that, because obviously it's an idea. If implemented well, it's fantastic, as you found. If implemented poorly, it's a debacle. So make your argument and then lay out how someone could go about trying that the way in which you've done it over the years.
Right. So I really don't have an argument. I mean, here's the thing, like, I'm trying to think at Woodbridge that I never really named captains. I feel like it's just for the situations that I've been in, we haven't had these kids that just like, oh, I want to be the captain. Like, it's just this, like, I have to do this. I have to do this. So it's worked because we never have had that kid that's just like, it's just such an important thing for them to be, because they all just kind of respect each other and lead naturally. And I don't know if that's a part of, because our culture, the way our culture is. And to be honest, for me as a leader, I am that way. Like I consider myself to kind of be more of a servant leader, as opposed to like this like hierarchy, like I'm here, you're there, type of leadership. And I think that actually, you know, it kind of like is a ripple effect to our team, because there's no like I listen to our kids, I ask their opinions, I want them to be involved in decision making. And I think because of that, they all feel this sense of like ownership and leadership when it comes to our program. And so I think it starts at the top. And I think that every one of them lead in different ways. Like we have a kid on our team, and I mentioned this before, who doesn't really touch the floor for us, but is a really smart, organized, and has a loud voice, right? Like she, you know, has a sense of like leadership in her own way. And so there's things that I task her with for the team. I'll say, hey, can you make sure everyone is at the bus by XYZ time? Or can you make sure everyone has their grade uniforms, or whatever the case may be? So that may be her thing. For Kiki, it may be like, Kiki, I need you to talk to Leah, make sure she's ready for the game today. You know, so that's Kiki's thing, and Kiki kind of accepts that. And so I think because there's no hierarchy amongst our staff and in the program in general, I think it is what helps us not to have to define like I'm at the top, you're at the bottom.
Yeah. Well, the argument I would make, and I think it sounds like it's a similar one, is you need everyone to step into their leadership role or followership role at a given moment. And what I've found is as soon as you name captains, it's implied that no one else has permission to lead.
Yeah.
And I need everyone to lead. And to your point, our best leader was probably one of our bottom two guys who never played before his senior year. He was a football captain, and the guys all wanted him to come play. And I was like, yeah, bring it. And he was like our guy and controlled the team, held them accountable, and never played. And so I think I love the approach. I wanted to make sure other people heard about it because it's not the norm, right? We're probably the outlier in how we do that. Let me ask you
your argument next time. That was a good argument. You articulated it much better.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Your team, I believe, obviously you were the national champions. If I didn't mention that earlier, USA Today national championship team. And I think you're undefeated. I don't know if that's accurate, but in dealing with the talent you're dealing with versus maybe some of your teams that you had early on in your career at Woodbridge, what I said in the years when we've had our best teams and we were really good in winning championships, that I did less basketball coaching in those years than I did managing egos. Can you talk a little bit about how you navigate having that much talent and what coaching that is like versus when you're a little less talented and how you approach those teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with one, bringing in the right kids, like kids who, we have that luxury where we can go out and recruit kids and bring in kids that have good parents and good values and core beliefs and all those good things. So I think it starts with that and doing your best to try to differentiate those kids and figure things out before you bring them into your school. I think that because of the nature of Sidwell Friends and our culture here, it is really translated to the court. At Sidwell, it's very much about care for others and servitude and just a lot of these core values that you want your kids and players to embody. It's not about you, it's about others. And I think it's translated to the court well for us. And it's such a rigorous academics institution that helps our kids stay extremely focused on the task at hand, being successful, what it takes to be successful, adversity, all of those things. And I think that really helped us and played into this program and this team this year. I didn't have to manage a lot of egos, to be quite honest with you. Kiki Rice is arguably the best player in the country. And if someone like that is in your program, is super humble, is willing to sacrifice for the team, it's hard for anyone else to be like, oh, I want this for my, you know what I mean? And Kiki could have probably scored 30, 40 points a game this year. She scored 15. And she was the best player in the country. We had 3 kids average 15 points a game. And it was because they sacrificed for the success of the team. There wasn't a ton of managing egos. And I made it a point to constantly say that and as a matter of fact, there was a tweet that went out about the big 3 and they said Kiki, Jaden, and Kendall. Well, we have a whole team of kids and coaches. And so I made it a point on social media to say, there's no big 3 at Sidwell Friends. It's not. Unless you want to refer to us like the big 18, then don't refer to us at all. Some of that stuff you have to really kind of squash when you realize it can really chip away at your team's culture. And so I really try hard to preserve what we have here. And it's not always easy, but I definitely try hard to do that.
2 things you said there that I think are important that I want to follow up on. One, tuning out the outside noise, right? Which you did on that tweet, but I'm sure, well, actually, I know working at a school similar to that our parents are very trusting in putting them in the environment that they're in, and they're very hands-off for the most part. Where that might not be the case other places, but it's just surprising given what you would think about schools like ours. But there's still people out there, other hangers-on or whatever, right? And how do you manage that noise? And I love the fact that you're doing that, something that we all have to do as coaches, and be very deliberate about it. The other thing in that you said is the big 18, which probably scares a ton of people off. That is a very big number. Talk to me about your decision to have that big of a roster and how you manage it, given what the traditional way of thinking is in our sport, that, the normal roster is 12, because I love big rosters too. So I'm curious how you do that and why.
So that wasn't in reference to the roster, it was in reference to the staff.
Gotcha.
Coaches on staff, my managers. It was all of us, because all of us are a part of the team.
Okay.
And so that included all of us, myself, my assistant coaches, my managers, everyone. Our roster, we had 11 kids on our roster.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah. But no, we don't keep big rosters. If that's the one thing I cannot stand is a big roster. As a matter of fact, we just talked about AAU. I was like, I am only keeping 9 kids on our AAU roster next year, because you can't play. There's no way you can play all those kids. But actually, our kids do a great job. In some of our league games or whatever, when we have a game where we know that we can get our whole bench in, our starters take that and they're like, we need to play really good so everyone can get a chance to get on the floor. And they celebrate those kids just it's like this, the best player on the team scoring.
Yeah. Those are the best moments, right? When you get to those and our kids, yeah, I do the same thing. Our kids actually keep a clipboard during the game, the ones when it starts, and then when the the end of the bench kids get in. The starters are the ones with the clipboard, like managing it and making sure they get credit for all their stuff.
Yeah,
All right, I'm gonna wrap up with this. And this is, take a pause on this one because you can answer it from any lens you want: parenting, teaching, coaching, wandering around the world as a human being. But what is something that you have most recently changed your mind on? I used to think this, and now I'm over here, and here's why.
Change my mind on.
And while you're thinking, the reason I asked this is I heard it on another podcast, and it really made me re-emphasize the value of not having a fixed mindset, constantly questioning your beliefs, constantly challenging them, right? And I read this in another book that said, if you walked into my office and I was using Windows 95 on my computer, you would think I was crazy. But if you asked me about a basketball philosophy and I said, oh yeah, like we're in the Bob Cousy mode where you only dribble with one hand, and you would, so it's like, how are we constantly challenging our beliefs? And so I'm always curious what people have recently changed their mind on for whatever reason.
Yeah. Shit, that's me constantly. I'm constantly like questioning, like, okay, am I doing this right? Or like, if this is a good philosophy, like, one of my defensive philosophies, and I'm a big defensive person. Like, I'm really big on defense because I believe in controlling the controllables, right?
Yep.
And so we always play high in the passing lanes, right? I'm always kind of leery about being in the gaps and that sort of stuff because, drive and kick. But our boys coach, they play phenomenal defense. Like, they play really, really good defense. And so I've really been contemplating whether or not to, like, because I actually spoke to him. I was like, I want you to come show us how you all play your man-to-man defense because I want our girls to be better at it. And so, that's one of the things for me. I think going into next season, I'm going to really try hard to kind of experiment with, and which is very, very different because I've never taught at being in the gaps. I've always taught in the passing lanes, force them out high. So that's definitely one of the things. But for me, I'm always constantly my own biggest critic. Like, I'm always like, I could have done this different. I could have done that. Or should I be doing this? Or is this the right thing? Or, those sorts of things. And that's why when I had been losing for those 3 years, I'm like, well, shit, maybe I shouldn't be coach. Maybe I could just be a good assistant coach. Mm-hmm. So I'm always questioning and evolving and trying to see if I could reinvent something that may or may not be reinvented. But yeah, I would say that's probably one of my biggest things, most recently. I'll start to think about.
Love it. Appreciate it. Well, thanks for taking the time and getting this on the books. I do appreciate it greatly, and safe travels as you make your way out here.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I appreciate it again for having me on.